In this lesson, we will learn how to modify an object's pivot in 3ds Max. Okay, so this is continuing from the last lesson. You can see that we have each piece parented together so we can start to have this character start to move more believably. Now, the issue that we see is that in a few areas, the spot we pivot from is incorrect. This is very clear from the chest. If we were to start to rotate, you could see that it starts to cave in. That's very unnatural. Thankfully, in Max, we can go in and correct an object's pivot with ease. We do so under the hierarchy panel. So notice here at the very top under the Adjust Pivot Rollout, we have Affect Pivot Only. We could also affect the selected object only, leaving the pivot behind. And we can affect our hierarchy. So what we're going to take a look at is Affect Pivot Only. So taking a look at the chest, you can see, again, the pivot is right in the center when it should be closer to where the spine would bend. Alright, so what I'll go ahead and do is choose Affect Pivot Only. It might help to go to a side view. I'll use Alt-W. Go to the left view here, right-click to activate the view. Press Alt-W again. We could also press the Z key to zoom into our selection. So let's go ahead and start to move this pivot. We can press the W key to go to our Move tool. And now we can go ahead and just move this back again, right about where the spine would deform from. So I'm going to place this at the base of this chest geometry. And a little bit more to the back. If this was a centered line, I'd place it on the left side of that center line. But now, if we were to go ahead and turn off Affect Pivot Only, let's take a look. When we go back to our perspective view and start to move the chest, you can see that now it's behaving in a more realistic way. And it's just a matter of moving our pivot. So that's really neat. What we'd want to do from there is take a look at the other pivot points. Taking a look at the head. That actually doesn't look too bad. How about the neck? The neck needs some work. So we know what to do. Let's go ahead and select the neck. Turn on Affect Pivot Only. And now let's go ahead and move back to our side view. We'll press the Z key to zoom in. And let's go ahead and fix this. We'll go ahead and move to our Move tool. And we'll start to adjust this handle. So it's at the base of the neck. Now, if we were to go back to just a normal transformation mode, turning off Affect Pivot Only, back to our perspective view, if we start to rotate, notice we're getting much better results, great results from our neck. So that's essentially how we can modify an object's pivot in 3ds Max. If you ever wanted to center the pivot again, you'd simply want to turn on Affect Pivot Only, and notice you have Center Object to. That option will go ahead and bring the pivot to the center point of the current selection. But chances are we want it brought back to where we've adjusted it, so I'll just go ahead and undo. Great. Now, the last thing I'd like to point out before we close this lesson off is what happens when we go in, Alt-right-click and choose Transform to 0. Notice how our chest piece has shifted. Remember in the previous lesson we went in and we made sure to freeze transforms after linking just to make sure that we get back to our neutral pose. But because we have adjusted our transform, the position of this object, we need to rerun our freeze transform tool to fix this. So I'll go ahead and undo this back before freeze transform or transform to 0 was applied. And just to be on the safe side, we could go ahead and select all of our pieces, Alt-right-click and choose Freeze Transform just to kind of reset things. Alright, great. So that'll clean things up. If we go back to our chest, notice it's moving just fine. If we were to go ahead and rotate and, in fact, translate, when we Alt-right-click and choose Transform to 0, it pops back to where it needs to be. Alright, so that's a look at how we can affect an object's pivot in 3ds Max. In the next lesson, we're going to get right into learning about bones.